So let's talk about the champions, Ireland. Back-to-back champions of the Six Nations. Yes, they didn't get back-to-back Six Nations Grand Slams, but it's still a very good achievement. What can they take from the championship? Is there anything they need to work on? And let's look ahead to South Africa, the sort of team they might take there. That's going to be awesome. South Africa away, that's going to sort out this debate of who is the best team in the world that's going around at the moment. That's going to be awesome. So welcome to this video supported by Lifting Giants. Let's get into their Six Nations. And yes, they were playing against 14 men for a lot of this game, but they still did it very nicely. Jack Crowley, his first Six Nations in charge, without Sexton there, made a few mistakes, but he grew into the tournament. And another guy who came of age was Big Joe McCarthy in the second row, making a massive statement against the most physical pack in the Six Nations. So they really exploited the chances they had against France, against those 14 men. They cruised past them, great start to the Six Nations. And then they moved on to Italy and dispatched them 36-0, the big bagel for Italy, which is always disappointing. And Andy Farrell made the bold call. He made a lot of changes, getting a lot of people game time in the Six Nations nice and early. And they weren't perfect. They did make quite a few mistakes, but still 36-0. You can't sniff at that, especially because the results Italy got later in the Six Nations. Crowley's running attack really threatened, add something to their 10 there, some physicality. Ireland's scrum was looking really good, and that was a theme throughout the Six Nations. They demolished Italy's scrum for sure, and they slipped through numerous Italian tackles, and the Italian defence definitely improved during the Six Nations. And a word for our sponsor of these Six Nations videos, Lifting Giants. They've actually created line-out lifting blocks that fit your hand, that are better than the traditional straight lifting blocks. If you want to get hold of a pair, it's the last weekend for 20% off using the code RugbyAnalyst20 and the links in the description below. Because Ireland know they play best when they get into that flow, move around the point of contact, lots of little passes, very intricate, and if they get it going, they know they can blow teams away. But the question is, how long do they wait? Now, teams, they have a plan B. I'm going to say it now. All good teams can go into a kick-to-compete game. They can play tight. They can play pick and go. They can chip in behind. They don't really need to practice that a lot. The key thing is calling it. Who's going to call it? Especially when these professional players know that their careers hang on what the coaches think of them, and if they make a call, they deviate from the practice plan, is that going to count against them? It's really, really tough. It takes big characters to make that call, and even then, do you think, well, if we give it another 5 minutes, it's going to click? And because it's worked so much before for Ireland, I think it's hard to go into a plan B when they know their plan A is so good, but it is something that is debated. Do they need to have practiced a plan B and have a call to go on to it, or do they wait for a call from the sidelines? I'd love to know your thought on that plan B thing. But anyway, they lose to England. The Grand Slam is gone, but they know it's all in their hands because they've had such good points difference, lots of bonus points. Then on to Scotland. They knew they could win the Six Nations at home against Scotland. They had good bonus points, good points difference. And yes, their momentum was knocked, but they came back nicely. Winning that title in front of their fans is a good way to do it, especially against really stiff defence from Scotland, and they really couldn't break them for a while until it was actually an overthrow from George Turner to Sheehan, who hooved it up to break that deadlock. It was a good test match, both sides going at it hard, but Ireland were the better team. Scotland couldn't get their attack going. The Irish defence was very physical. The Irish scrum, once again, a real weapon. Furlong had a try disallowed, which looked pretty good. Henshaw somehow got held up over the line by Redpath, so they could have been further ahead. Gibson Park was pulling those strings, and the power game, the power carriers, looked really good in this game for Ireland. So yes, it was 17-13, but I think it was a bigger win in my head for Ireland. So a well-deserved win, very special, even though they didn't get the Grand Slam. It just shows how hard getting Grand Slams is. So let's look ahead to that summer tour. Do they make too many changes to play South Africa? Well, probably not. They kind of know roughly what their best team is. Let's have a look at it here. Maybe a few question marks about Sheehan's throwing, but he is their best hooker. If he gets that throwing down, then he's the complete hooker. Furlong, again, he's getting a little bit older. He's not quite that twinkle toes hooker that we've seen in the past, but he is still a strong guy. He's got big performances in him. Beelum could start, but I don't see there's much benefit there. The Furlong-Beelum 1-2 is really good. McCarthy looks like he is ahead of James Ryan. He is that bit more big, that bit more physical, but there's no reason he has to start every single game. So Ryan could start. I think Burney's a definite. He's just a bit of a genius there. And then that back row, is it Peter Amani or is it Baird? That is the question, but Peter Imani's the captain, so I'm sure it will be Peter Imani, but should it be Baird? He is more athletic, taller, he doesn't have the experience. Does he graft as hard as Peter Imani? I don't know, but that's a good debate there. Van der Vliet and Doris at 8, that is easy. If Peter Imani is not on the pitch, Doris is captain, and he's actually a good shout for Lions captain. That was something that came in the comments the other day. Let's see if he gets some captaincy at some point. Gimson Park, by far the best 9, not even close. Crowley, definitely their best 10, and Frawley I think is a really good backup, plus he can cover 15. I think he's ahead of Harry Byrne. In the centres, you've got the 3, the trinity of Aki, Ringrose or Henshaw, and even though Henshaw had a brilliant Six Nations, I still think Ringrose at his best is slightly better at 13, but those 3 are in the squad, so Henshaw goes on the bench, and that's super tough on Nash, who had a really good Six Nations covering for Hansen, but Hansen's got so much money in the bank, if you like, so many good performances, I think he probably does come back in, although Nash would be good if Hansen was still injured for some reason. Lowe had a very strong Six Nations, we know his kicking's good, his power game was good, and Keenan is their best 15 by miles. So that's the 23 as I see it. Probably Casey over Murray. Maybe you could say Murray's physicality, his experience about South Africa could count, but I think Casey is a better scrum half at the moment as Murray gets on a little bit. But it's a good 23. It's going to be an amazing tour to South Africa, old school tour to South Africa, back-to-back games. Going to be absolutely awesome. So all the comments on Ireland's Six Nations down below. What team should they play against South Africa? Love to know your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time.